Welcome and hello. This is a video lesson in HEC RAS controller. I've titled this lesson VBA Basics. So before we start digging into the heavy programming, I decided to make a video here about some of the basic functionality and feature within the Visual Basic for Applications code that we're going to be using built into Microsoft Excel. So what I have on the screen here is my HEC RAS project. It's a 1D model that uses unsteady state flow. This is a project we're not really going to be dealing with too much in this lesson, but I wanted to show it anyway. What we are going to be dealing with is Microsoft Excel and some of the VBA code, which we'll access that HEC RAS project that we've already built. So let's get started with the VBA. Go ahead and open up your Microsoft Excel. Click on the Developer tab. If you don't have the Developer tab, you can add that by going to File, click on More, click on Options, and then Customize Ribbon, and then click Developer tab and OK. All right, so once they're there, click on Visual Basic. That will open up this window. Let's just go ahead and click on Sheet 1 and then enter our code right in here. Now down below, I have this intermediate window, which sort of serves as a console window. I like to have that open sometimes. You can go Control G to open that up, or just go up to View and Intermediate Window. All right, so in this lesson, we're going to be talking about variables, subroutines, functions, comments, and debugging. So let's start with variables first in VBA. There's lots of different data types that you can save your variables as. And the 5 data types that RAS controller accommodates are Boolean, single, double, string, and long. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste an example of each of those on the screen here. We have Boolean, that's either true or false, 1 or 0, on or off. The actual value you want to assign it is true or false. And I have some HEC RAS styled variable values as well. So for instance, if you want to know if it's steady flow or not, then you can just create a Boolean variable called is steady flow. The value is either true or it is false. If it's false, that would mean unsteady flow. The second variable here is single precision floating variable. So an example here would be like your channel slope of 0.15%. After that, you have double precision floating variable. So an example of that would be heat flow rate. Of course, you'd have to keep in mind what units you're dealing with. The fourth variable type is string. So this is just a text field. The way you declare these variables is type in DIM for dimension, space, variable name. It looks like camel case is the way I was going here, but that's up to you. And then the word as, and then the actual data type name. So the different data types are Boolean, single, double, string, and long. Long represents integers. So I believe VBA has a different integer variable type for shorter integers, but this long data type is for longer integers, and I believe it's the only integer type that is compatible for HEC RAS controller. So the example here is cross-section ID. What we're doing in all of these situations is we're first declaring the variable, and then we're assigning it a value. So in the case of double, we're declaring heat flow as the name of that double variable, and then we're assigning the value of 123,456.789, and it looks like that is in CFS. So similar pattern for each of the 5 different data types, or you may call them variable types here using HEC RAS controller in VBA Excel. Okay, so I'm going to carry on with subroutines. That was variables. Subroutines is a block of code that performs an action. It does not return a value directly like a function does, but it can take input parameters. So what you can do is either write your own subroutine, or you can utilize the subroutines that are built into the HEC RAS controller. I'm going to start by just writing my own subroutine, which I already have prepared. So to save time, I'm just going to paste it in here, and then boom, here it is. I've actually got 2 subroutines here. The first subroutine is called demo, and it's going to call the second subroutine, which is run RAS plan, and then I'm passing it this parameter, which is a string, 100-year underscore flood plan. That is read in as the plan name as string parameter in the run RAS plan subroutine. And all I'm doing here is printing running HEC RAS plan :space and then the name of the variable, which is 100-year flood plan. So this debug.print will print down here in the intermediate window. I grabbed the wrong window there. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and see that in action. So let me just go ahead and hit save. And then the run button is right here. This is part of the debug toolbar. We'll talk about that in a few different ways to run these subroutines a little bit later. But for now, just click on run sub user form or F5. Okay, this reminds me I need to actually put my cursor on a particular subroutine that I want to run, but it looks like it's asking me if it's subroutine demo, which it is. So I can just click on run and then boom, here it printed out the text that I expected it to print out down here in the intermediate window. So I can just delete that. And then another way to run the subroutine is F5. So you can just type that on your keyboard. Okay, run. And then I think if I put my cursor on that subroutine and just hit F5, it won't ask me. Yep, so it just ran again. That's why I'm seeing the text twice down here. Let me go ahead and delete it. Again, if I didn't see this intermediate window, I can close it and then go up to View, Intermediate Window. And then another thing I could do besides printing to the intermediate window, you can use the message box. So let me go ahead and uncomment that. We'll do a single quote to create a comment. So I'm no longer going to be printing to the intermediate window. Now I'm going to be printing the exact same message, but to a pop-up message box, which I think just gives you the option to click OK. So let me go ahead and save that and then my cursor on demo, click on the play button, and then boom, here is the result from that subroutine. It's telling me running HEC RAS plan 100-year underscore flood plan. Another way to run the subroutine is to click on the Excel button to go back to Excel, click on macros, and then click on sheet1.demo. That's the name of the subroutine. Click on run. Boom, here is my dialog box. And then one last way to invoke the subroutine is to assign it to a button click. So to do that, you'd go click on insert right here, click on button. I'll just draw myself a button right here. I'm going to assign it to this sheet1.demo subroutine and then click on OK. I can relabel the button. So instead of button 1, I could call it run simulation. Okay, that's fine. Click off and then actually click the button to run it. And then boom, here's how to invoke that subroutine. Okay, so anyway, let's go back to our Visual Basic. Well, one last way to run the subroutine, I guess this is the 5th way now. Click on the Run menu, actually click on Demo, Run menu, and Run Subroutine. All right, so there's that. That was an example of a subroutine that we wrote, but we can also utilize the subroutines that are built into the HEC RAS controller class. Down below here, I'm going to paste in a new subroutine. By the way, if you ever need to indent or dedent, just go ahead and highlight all the rows, click on Tab to indent or Shift Tab to unindent. Open project is now the name of the subroutine, and what it's doing is it's going to create an HEC RAS controller object I'm calling RC. Then I'm also assigning a file name to the actual path of the HEC RAS.prj project file. And lastly, I'm going to open up that project using the rc.project open subroutine. So this project open is the name of a subroutine that's part of the HEC RAS controller class. Once that's open, we can go ahead and also perform some other tasks such as show RAS or quit RAS. So if I type in RC and then dot, the IntelliSense should be bringing up my options for the list of different subroutines. I'm not seeing it right now. So to do that, let me double check. Go up to Tools and then Options, and then in the Editor tab, make sure you have the Auto List Members checked on, which I do. Okay, so this should work. Let me click OK. Okay, let me try that again. So RC dot, maybe I have to keep typing show RAS. Okay, I think the problem I was having is when I clicked on to run the subroutine, it gave me this compile error, user defined type, not defined. Leads me to believe that the reference for the RAS controller has not been included for this file. So let me go ahead and check that. To stop the debugging, you can just click on the reset button right up here. This is part of the debug toolbar. In fact, I should probably also talk about that. I'm going to go view menu right here, toolbars, and then debug. Looks like it has some of the same controls that are right here. But anyway, run, pause, or break, and then reset. So yeah, click on reset. Let's go up to Tools, References. Oh, okay. Looks like that isn't persistent because in the previous lesson I said that we need to actually add HEC RAS to our references. So here it is for me. It is HEC RAS version 6.6. I have a few different versions loaded in, but just check the version that you're using. Click OK. And now the IntelliSense or the auto suggest should be working when I click on RC dot. Okay, there we go. So now it's giving me a list of options or suggested procedures to type in here. So what I was going for was show RAS. Okay, there it is. So you can just hit tab and it will complete. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and reset and save, and then go ahead and run this open project. What it's going to do is not only open up that project as a process, but it's also going to activate the HEC-RAS window. So boom, there it is. Here's the HEC-RAS window. I actually closed it prior to running that subroutine. So here it is. I can open up my geometric data editor and then perform all the other tasks. But I'm going to go ahead and close that right there. And then just double check my task manager has terminated that instance of HEC-RAS. So it looks like it's not an app. I knew that. And then down here as the background process, I also do not see HEC-RAS. So that's good. If you don't have the task manager easily accessible, if you're on a Windows machine, of course you would be if you're using VBA for HEC-RAS, just type in task manager and then it should be one of the top hits for your Windows search. And there it is. Okay. After show RAS, I'm going to RC and then quit RAS. Okay, that's another procedure that you can perform. So what will happen in that case is it will show and then it will open up. So let's go ahead and save it and run this open project once again. And boom, you saw it really quickly flash on the screen and then close again. If you don't believe me, we could actually put a breakpoint on this RC.quit RAS line. And what's going to happen is it's going to halt the execution of this subroutine just before this line that's marked with the dark red dot. So let's go ahead and make that happen. I'll go ahead and run the subroutine. Okay, so it's open, but it then brought this VBA window to focus. So it's open up right here. But once I continue the execution of the subroutine, it's going to close. So let's go ahead and do that. F5 to continue. Also, F8 will continue. Now's a good time to talk about debugging. So here's the debug window. And I'm going to start by clearing all the breakpoints, which you can just do manually by clicking in the margin to create a breakpoint. Let's say, for instance, I put a breakpoint right here where we're assigning the string file name variable, the actual path to the .prj file. And then if I click on debug, or how about run, let's start, it'll run to this breakpoint line. After that, we can click on debug. Here are our options. We can F8 step into, Shift F8 step over in the event that the particular line that it's paused on is another call to a subroutine or a function. You can just step over that, or you can step into it, which is Control Shift F8. I'm sorry, step into would be F8. If there's nothing to step into, it'll just go to the next line of the code. Step out of is if you're in a function or a subroutine, it will step out up to the parent level, and then run to cursor is just Control F8. So that would just basically run to the next breakpoint or the end of the subroutine or function. So those are your controls right there. We'll definitely get some debugging experience and exposure once we get into some examples. Also, watch variables. This is a way to keep track of the value of certain variables as you're debugging and stepping through your code. So if you click on add watch, what we could do is add this variable here, string file name. Actually, hold on, let me do it a different way. I'm going to go right click and then add watch. There we go. Okay, so I guess I just type it in, same thing. Click OK. It opened up the watch window down below here, which I can close and reopen if I want. Just go up to the view menu and then watch window. I've got an intermediate window for console output and my watch window down here. Let's close the intermediate window. Now the string file name currently doesn't have a value assigned to it. See, it says value just blank. But after we execute this particular line of code by clicking on F5 or F8, which one was it here? F8 would be the next line down. Boom. So it executed this line of code. It assigned the value of that file path to the string variable string file name. So that's how that works. And then let's just go ahead and click on F8 so it will continue the entire routine. Okay. Now it says out of context because it's beyond the scope or the ambit of variable since the subroutine has terminated. Okay, so that's enough for debugging. And let's move on to functions. In VBA, a function is a reusable block of code that performs a calculation or task, and it returns a value back to the calling code. Therefore, when it's defined, the function needs to also be assigned a data type because it will return a specific value. Which data type? One of those 5 variables that we talked about at the beginning of the lesson: Boolean, single, double, string, or long. Again, there's more data types than that in VBA, but when we're using the RAS controller, it's got to be one of those 5. Functions are oftentimes getters or setters. So if you're familiar with object-oriented programming, that's a very common paradigm for getting or setting data for your different objects. Some examples that the book mentions is getting the project name, getting the current active plan for your HEC RAS project, getting the number of steady flow water surface profiles to view. So there's really no shortage of the number of variables that you would want to get information out of from your HEC RAS project. I'm going to move the watch window out of the way. Just come down here. I'm going to paste in a new function, which I've got started already. Basically, you've seen all this code before. Function name is going to be called get project title. It's going to return a string. It does not take any parameters, but if we had any parameters, they would go right in here. Okay, we'll see an example of a function with parameters eventually. And then what I'm doing in these first 4 lines here is the same thing we saw in the subroutine. So I'm just going to open up this same project we've been working with already. Now I'm actually going to do some typing here. So what we're going to do is return the project title, which is just its string project.prj. So it's not too exciting, but here we go. Dim in project title as string. Then next line will be project title equals RC dot current project title. Okay, current project title. There we go. And then tab to insert. Next up, let's just echo that in a message box. So I'll go message box project title. And then finally, we want to, let's also print it out to our intermediate window. Debug print project title. Okay, so that should return our project title both in a dialog box as well as to our intermediate window down here. Let's go ahead and click on that, save and run. Okay, so here it is. Project is the name of the project title. And then down here it says project right here. That's the same project title that's right here, project.prj. I didn't really mention comments too much, but one thing I did want to mention, besides the single line comment, like what you're seeing here, just a single quote, and then you don't need to put a space, I do though, it looks good, is if you have a number of lines you want to comment all at the same time, or uncomment all at the same time, there's this button right up here, comment block or uncomment block. Go ahead and click that, and then it uncomments those lines of code. So if I wanted to comment out all 8 lines of this function, highlight all 8 lines, and then click on this comment block, and boom, you can tell by the green coloration that they're all commented out. Okay, let me go ahead and put that back, uncomment, and yeah. If you had other questions about, say, for instance, the VBA syntax, how to write a loop, how to write an if statement, how to write a switch statement, I would just go ahead and recommend looking it up online. Ask Google, ask AI, ask an example, copy, paste. The syntax really isn't too difficult. If you have any questions, let me know. I could probably make a video on it. And you're going to see examples of all those things I just mentioned in future videos. Okay. So that's all I had prepared for this lesson. We covered some of the main VBA basic topics, albeit briefly. Those were variables, subroutines, functions, debugging, and comments.